One major question surrounding the Russia investigation is, will President Trump meet face-to-face with special counsel Robert Mueller? Let's ask Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut. He's a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, one of those investigating the Russia meddling and collusion. Great to have you here, Senator.
Thank you, Allison.
So you predict that President Trump will meet face-to-face?
Unquestionably, there has to be that kind of face-to-face interview. The timing is important because the special counsel needs to have as many facts and as much evidence before he has that face-to-face interview with the President of the United States.
So when might that happen?
My view is it will probably happen sometime this year. We're going to have more convictions. There have been 2 already, and more indictments.
How do you know that there's going to be more?
I think that the evidence accumulating against individuals within the White House, within the administration, the mounting evidence of obstruction of justice that's public, and we have no idea all of what is available to the special counsel. Plus, there'll be a trial. In the Manafort case, almost certainly that will be revelatory as to additional facts.
Who else might be indicted?
At this point, speculation is pretty hazardous, but the people around the president who have been involved, for example, in his writing a misleading and deceptive statement on Air Force One returning from Europe about his son's meeting with foreign agents, describing that meeting as having to do only with Russian adoption, when clearly its purpose was to get dirt on Hillary Clinton. Who participated in that meeting? Who knew about its falsity? That's the kind of individual who may have exposure.
So, but when you say exposure, that means that Don Jr., Hope Hicks, and what would the indictment be for?
The indictment could be for obstruction of justice. There is obvious exposure on money laundering, involvement of Deutsche Bank and Jared Kushner in those transactions. But to take Donald Trump Jr., we're writing today, Senator Whitehouse and I, asking for the Glenn Simpson interview to
one of the
be
founders
made
of
public.
Fusion GPS, who testified in front of your committee?
He was interviewed in our committee.
But behind closed doors.
Behind closed doors.
Why do you want that to be made public?
The American people have a right to know exactly what Glenn Simpson told us, and that's just a start. They also have a right to know what Donald Trump Jr. told us. And I will tell you, Allison, as a former prosecutor, I have looked very carefully and closely at the Glenn Simpson interview and the Donald Trump Jr. interview, and the most profound and pressing questions come out of that Donald Trump Jr. interview.
Such
and the American people
what
deserve
raised
to know
your
it.
eyebrows?
Well, to take what is already public, the exchange between Donald Trump Jr. and WikiLeaks about stolen and hacked materials taken from the Clinton campaign. Why wasn't that material and that approach reported to the FBI?
But
the Republican leadership on the Judiciary Committee has made a criminal referral about Christopher Steele, who blew the whistle on Russia.
he's the one who compiled the dossier, and so your committee, it seems, often is more interested in him and finding and doing something with him. What's that about?
And that's profoundly disappointing because the Republican majority has made a referral asking for criminal review of Christopher Steele, who reported wrongdoing, not committed it. And they're using facts that the FBI and the Department of Justice actually provided the committee. In other words, they and we should be looking at Russian meddling and obstruction of justice and Trump collusion, which are the priorities for our investigation.
But just to be clear, from where you sit today, you believe that Don Jr. and Jared Kushner could be facing indictment?
Well, I'm not predicting, and I'm not saying what all the evidence may be, but certainly the evidence points to continued investigation, and there ought to be some very searching consideration of whether they face criminal charges.
But when you say that you already see a case for obstruction of justice, you're pinning that on the misleading statement crafted on Air Force One about that meeting with the Russian lawyer.
The Air Force One statement, the direction to his White House counsel to stop Sessions from recusing himself, the firing of Jim Comey, the requirement that Jim Comey pledge loyalty, and then the request that he let go Michael Flynn. There are a series of events and statements that create mounting evidence, serious credible evidence of obstruction of justice. Now, corrupt intent is a key element, and that has to be proved as well beyond a reasonable doubt. Robert Mueller is a careful, meticulous, methodical prosecutor, and he's going to demand a high standard.
The feds are now investigating the Clinton Foundation. What's that about?
Well, this investigation is about 3 years old. It was closed at some point, reported publicly.
Why has it been reopened?
And the reason it's been reopened, I think, is part of a continuing campaign on the part of Republicans, mainly in Congress, to deflect and distract from the special counsel investigation and our investigation, the Judiciary Committee, as well as the Intelligence Committee, into the Russian attack on our democracy. And let's be very clear, the Russians are going to do it again.
But who called for this to be reopened from the Clinton Foundation? The White House?
The White House has been talking about it. Members of Congress, the president's defenders and sycophants in Congress have been talking about it.
But just because somebody's talking about it, that means the FBI does it? I mean, does somebody have to request it? Why does the FBI reopen a closed investigation?
The president has said, very wrongly, that he should be able to control what the Department of Justice does. But the reason that the FBI has reopened it is quite possibly because of the threats that have been raised and the criticism made of the FBI and law enforcement by members of Congress as well as the White House.
Are you concerned about the president's mental state?
I am concerned about the president potentially violating the law. I'm concerned about the instability of the president's policies as well as his personality. The threats and taunts to North Korea are deeply concerning, and I think that the special counsel investigation has to be protected against possible impulsive and rash threats that would bring us to a constitutional confrontation and even a conflagration, similar to what we had with the Saturday Night Massacre.
Senator Richard Blumenthal, we always appreciate you coming in and talking
Thank
about
you.
all this. Thanks so much for